ignite their creative ingenuity into action to see how they can explore other areas? Because basically that there's hardly any state in the country that doesn't have some natural resource or potential for its people. But it would seem as if, should we call it some freebies that comes from the national level?
Absolutely.
So what can they do for states? It's pathetic we're discussing this.
Yes.
And for those caught in this web of non-salaries for months, just won't find any kind of circle in our discussion until we fashion a way forward or a way out for these ones. What do you think some of these states, specifically Osun and even other states that are enmeshed in this dilemma, can do?
Well, as I've said, I think most of the states need to be look inwards and see what they can do. And then let me also address this issue before I go forward. How many of those workers are genuine? Are there ghost workers amongst the workforce? And as such, perhaps the wage bill is not as large as it should be. And then also, we look at it. People have not been paid for 11 months, yet they are not leaving. They are not leaving. I'm sure if any of you here has not been paid for 11 months, you would have found something to do. Why are they not leaving? Are there other ways at which money is being made or paid? And all those kind of things. They're talking of salaries. How about allowances? People might travel for the weekend and get paid per diem and all those kind of payments that they always find a way of making possible.
Nobody has ever mentioned the huge pensions of the former governors. I know there was a previous report before the president was sworn in that he was going to look into those humongous pensions. Who knows if they will revisit it. But do we have a proper assessment of us, a realistic assessment of what's going on, if they didn't mention such things as these pensions?
These are all the issues, as far as I'm concerned, that needs to be looked at. It's a holistic thing. And it's not something that can happen easily and overnight. But we need to be able to come to the point and say, this nation needs to move forward. And we need to do all these things properly. Look at pensions. Where in the world does someone fix his own salaries?
Well, let me just bring it. There are those who believe that probably the minimum wage, if the public office holders are paid minimum wage, it will help to reduce the cost of governance without people losing their jobs. Do you think that might be a way to go?
I will look at it even from a different perspective. I think a minimum wage should also not be across board. It should be, there should be like a prescription by the federal government, but let the states also pay in accordance with their pockets, in accordance to the work that is done, in accordance to the IGR and those kind of things. We say we're running a federal system, but we're not really running a federal system. And that's why there are all of these dislocations. You look at the Constitution, there are provisions here that some certain things are going to be done by the National Assembly for the states. The National Assembly have not been elected for the states. They've been elected at the federal level, the state assembly. So when you then begin to make laws at the federal level, you stipulate minimum wage at the federal level, and a state that cannot afford it must pay. Of course, the people would protest, and there are issues.
This other matter also popped up while they had that meeting with the president. They requested maybe a revision of the what's that one now? The revenue allocation formula. Because this kind of matter came up at the just concluded national conference. How should we approach that? Again,
there's a provision for the revenue formula. And it says it's to be reviewed every 5 years by the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. I'm not sure there's been a review in the past 10 years of that. There are provisions on these issues. And that was even a constitutional provision in order that it will be sacrosanct and will not be readily changeable. This brings me to another issue. There are laws in this country. There are laws that are good, but the will to apply those laws. Sometimes you see we obey the letters of the law and not the spirit of the law. If we do and obey the spirit behind those laws, I'm sure we can make a lot of progress. But in my own opinion, unfortunately, I think there's too much personal interest in governance in this country. People are not looking at the larger picture. People are not looking at what is good for the nation, but usually it's personal interest. For example, the legislative arm of government. I think their emolument is just weird.
That's another chapter.
That's another. I agree with you absolutely. But you see, that comes to the point that I'm saying that all of these things are interconnected.
Even though some of them
so
say
it has to be holistically looked at.
Although some of them say there's a misconception, but we'll revisit that.
At another time.
Yes, indeed, and we'll hope that you have time to come on as well. Thank you for coming on. Mr. Dapo Oyewunmi is the CEO, Center for Law and Business. Let's take a look at some comments coming through before we wrap up today. Let's see, do we have that? Yes, we can. Zuara talking about the APC rift.
Well, I think it's high time these legislators started looking into the issue of independent candidacy.
I think the amendment has it, but who knows?
Adeyemi says, if APC is to be held responsible, then it should be allowed to have a say.
Well, Umar says, as it stands, the APC members in the House of Reps have very little trust in the House leadership.
Well, Zimo, what is happening in the two houses is the result of a marriage between strange bedfellows.
And there you go. What a session, what a day it's been, and what a week as well. Well, thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
And I'm now Taigwe. I also got that.
I didn't know it's Friday. Many thanks. I'm Sulaiman. I'll let us see you again.